the Chamber and remotely through Microsoft Teams. Now, before we start the business of the day, I would like to let the committee know of the sad passing of Mr. Angus Murray, who recently retired from the Corps as a Principal Strategy Manager. On behalf of this committee, I would like to offer our condolences to Angus's family at this very sad time, and I'll ask the Chief Executive to come in and say a few words on that at the moment.
Yes, thank you for that opportunity, Convener. It's a sad day indeed. I mean, it is only a few months since we were paying tribute to Angus's service with the Corps, to his skills and indeed his character and personality. We were doing that in this very chamber in which he worked from 2000 for over 20 years for the Corps in a number of posts. As we all know, as many of us know, he suffered from a short but severe illness, and he passed away earlier today. We will miss him very much from many scenes, I think, many scenes in the islands. And he was always a man of great intellect and commitment to the Western Isles, to Lewis, and our prayers and our sympathies go to his immediate family, of course, and to all of us, I think, who have lost a friend and colleague. Thank you, Convener. Chair, sorry.
Thank you very much for these words, Chief Executive, and it's a very solemn occasion for us this morning, I must say. Could I please ensure your microphones are now off? And before we begin the meeting proper, I'm going to ask Councillor Finlay Stewart to lead us in a word of prayer, and the meeting is now being recorded. Councillor Stewart.
Jesus God, our loving Heavenly Father, as we come before Thee once again on this morning, we again give thanks for this day, and Lord, for Thy goodness to us. We give thanks, Lord, for another day on Murphy's ground, and I give thanks that we can come and call upon Thine holy name. We, Lord, ask that You would be with us at this committee meeting. We pray, Lord, that You would bless each one of us, and we give thanks, Lord, for those who have prepared the papers for this meeting, and we ask that You would be with them and bless them. We pray, Lord, for our leader and convener, and we pray, Lord, for the Chief Executive and his staff and all our staff, Lord, that You would be with each one, and that You would watch over and keep them, Lord, and all the work that they do, and be with them, Lord, in their homes and in their families. We again, as we have just heard, remember the family of Angus Charlton Murray, who, as we have heard, passed away sadly during the night. And Lord, we remember him as we grew up with him and played football with him and knew him for all of our lives. And we remember especially today Christine and Matthew and Kate, his family. And we remember also his brother Ian and his sister Christine, that You would bless each one of them, Lord, and that You would be with them at this difficult time. So, Lord, we ask now that You would guide us in all that is to be done here today, and that You would be with us, each one of us, and go before us, forgiving us again, O Lord, for our many sins and shortcomings and failings. And all we ask is in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Now, in regard to the conduct of the meeting, a reminder of the following. You're all probably well versed with it now, but I'll go over it once again. If you're a member of the committee attending remotely, please leave your camera on and your microphone off. Officers attending remotely, please leave both off unless you are called to speak to a report or answer a question. A reminder to members and officers in the chamber of the queuing system. The chair controls the mics. First of the queue flashes green and the remainder are solid green. The chair will allow each flashing mic in, which will change to red, and only 2 mics on the floor will be red at any one time. If you wish to come back on a question, please leave your mic on, and officers speaking to the reports, I would advise you to do the same. Committee members will be given priority. In regard to declarations of interest, members must leave the chamber or end the call remotely. A reminder that the meeting has been recorded and will be made available on the Corner's website following the meeting. Now, I would like to welcome Mr. Brian Howarth and Mr. Ray Boost from Audit Scotland. Very welcome to join us today, gentlemen, to this meeting. And I am ruling items 3A and 3B as urgent. So we move on now to the minutes. The minute of the meeting of the 23rd June 2022 for approval. Approved, yeah, thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda, declaration of interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items on the agenda. It would be helpful if members express why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Members in the chamber, please do so now by pressing your microphone on or remotely through Teams by using the raise hand function. And please ensure the declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to the protocol as previously indicated. I'm not seeing any lights on or raised hands, so I take it there are no declarations of interest. So with that, we'll move on to items 3A and 3B, which are urgent items. They're financial matters. 3A is the annual accounts for 21-22. This report seeks approval for the submission of the draft annual accounts for 21-22. The accounts are approved at item 3B. Norman MacDonald will speak to the report and answer any questions. Norman.
Thank you, Chair. There's not much to add actually to the accounts themselves. This is a follow-up to the draft accounts which came before the committee for approval for submission to Audit Scotland in June. The accounts you have before you today are the audited version of the accounts, and I'm pleased to note that it's an unqualified audit opinion. I'm happy to take any questions, but I think maybe the time for questions might be after the audit report, because they will pick up on any changes or any issues that they found in the accounts.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. MacDonald. I'll ask the Chief Executive now to come in.
Very briefly, Chair, and thank you. The word I always look for as Chief Executive of the accounts is unqualified, and that's there. But I just want to thank Mr. MacDonald and his team, which, as you know, is diminished at this time by the absence of a director, for all their work in bringing these unqualified and very clear. And I think they're a good reader, as good readers one can have in local government at present. But I just wish to thank Mr. MacDonald and his team for the work that's gone into them. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. And again, on behalf of the committee and as Chair of the committee, I would echo your sentiments there to Mr. MacDonald. The accounts finished in time and a lot of work, as you can see, a lot of reading in these accounts and a lot of hard work behind the scenes. So thank you for that, Mr. MacDonald, and please pass that on to your team as well. Yeah, I think we'll move on if there are any, we'll move on to the Audit Scotland report. It's the 21-22 report. Yeah, we'll need to approve the accounts. So will we approve the accounts just now? And then move on to the audit report. Yeah, I take it, yes, we'll approve, the accounts are approved. Okay, thank you. Okay, 3B on the agenda is the report by Audit Scotland. And apologies for the late circulation of this report. It wasn't finalised until Friday. I'm sure Mr. Howarth will cover that in his report, though. The report summarised the findings arising in the 21-22 audit of the Cónla. And I am delighted to welcome Brian Howarth again to us. Welcome, Brian. Good morning to you. And you want to speak to this report and answer any questions to the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to say, obviously, the audit's complete of the 21-22 accounts. I'll cover the main issues in our report in just a second. A few bits of kind of procedure, I suppose, is this is also the opportunity for anybody, for any of the committee members, etc., to identify if there's any frauds or events or legal issues that we need to be made aware of at this point. It's a standard kind of auditing request. So if there's anything, you can raise that in questions. After this meeting, the accounts and a letter of representation will be signed electronically and then signed by me as auditor. And hopefully everybody's who needs to have the contact from our team who organise the electronic signing. I'm just talking briefly over some of the key messages. As Malcolm has said, it's a clear audit certificate, a clean audit certificate. We mentioned particularly there are no significant really issues arising from the audit of the final accounts. Just talking about the wider elements of the audit. We know, of course, the Cónla has made a surplus of 3.9 million this year. That's a combination of COVID unspent funds, departmental underspends, and also central contingency underspends. What's happened there, obviously, is that's added to general fund reserves, which are now at almost 32 million. There's been significant increases over the last 3 years in the general fund position. That's been driven by COVID-19 funding and also by Crown Estate surpluses. A big element, obviously, of the reserve carrying forward is both COVID monies, which are spent on COVID functions, and 5 million to support budgets in the future. I think at paragraph 68, we note the long-term projections for the financial position. There's obviously a risk to future budgets due to significant events recently, you know, energy costs rising significantly and the pay award pressures. I think if the projections, you know, that are predicted within paragraph 68 suggest, you know, a 4 to 5 million pressure each year, then reserves might dwindle or diminish quite markedly if that is actually called on by reserves. I don't think the Corla is unusual in that position. I think most councils in Scotland that I know are certainly sitting with significant reserves, but facing quite significant financial pressures in their budgets going forward. So I expect we'll see reserves reduced over the piece over the next 2 or 3 years across councils. As part of that, on paragraph 82, we continue to highlight the need for medium-term financial strategy, and the Director of Finance role is obviously a key part in that. And paragraph 100, we talk about the best value report, which was issued, you know, quite recently. There, the key messages around the need for strategic leadership, communications are priorities. You're a relatively small council, and that requires probably in these hard times focus and coordination across services. Also within the best value report, we talk about trying to finalise key plans, the financial strategy we talked about, workforce and asset management and the other key areas. So that's really the gist of the report. This is the last year of my 6-year appointment as the auditor of the Corla. You know, I've been delighted to be the auditor for that time. I think it's been a very constructive relationship, and I'd particularly like to thank members, Malcolm and his team, and especially Norman and the finance staff over that period for the support that they've given the audit process. And I'm happy to take questions, Chair, from that report.
Thank you, Mr. Howarth. Thank you very much for that. And, you know, we do value your input. We don't take any of this lightly. We've noticed your action plan there in the report, and we're glad to report that some of this is progressing well, and we are going to monitor the best value action points as well and try and bring it forward. The key element is, as you agreed, or in your own report, is the finance element, where we don't have a finance director at the moment. And that is a key priority for this authority, and we need to put something in place to stabilise the ship as it was. But again, we're grateful to Norman and the team for what they have done in the absence of the finance director role. I'll ask the Chief Executive maybe just to come in, and then I'll open it up for questions for either Mr. Howarth or Mr. MacDonald. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief because like the accounts themselves, I mean, the first statement in key messages is exactly what I would wish to see. The audit opinions on the annual accounts and its group are unmodified, and the comments made in the key messages there have been worked on with us. I thank Brian and his team for their purpose of engagement with us. It sets out the position exactly as it is. We have thankfully and necessarily retained our reserves. We will need them in the year to come and in the years to come like never before, because our budget is greatly in excess of what we have. That is why you have reserves. That is why you use them strategically and intelligently, and I hope we will do that. We need our medium-term financial strategy. Of course, that's very desirable, but that requires some certainty about the levels of finance which we will have, and certainty is not much of a feature of the political landscape at present, or indeed the economic landscape. I'm pleased to see the comments on governance and transparency, and of course on best value. We've just been through the BVAR, and we look forward to further discussion with the Accounts Commission and with Audit Scotland colleagues about the implementation of these conclusions. So I'm I have little to add to that. Happy to pick up any points addressed to me or to colleagues. But this is the summary of where we are, and there is much to be done. There are many challenges ahead, but the point is, do we have a good base? Do we have good governance? Do we have good financial management and accountability? We do. What we need, of course, is a financial strategy for the years ahead, which will not be easy to produce in current circumstances in ways which do not damage our communities and the Corla to a greater degree. But these are wider arguments which we will pursue elsewhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for these comments, Chief Executive. I'll now open it up to questions to either Mr. Howarth, the Chief Executive, or Mr. MacDonald. And I see Councillor Gordon Murray, first of all.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. This is, I've got three issues that I want to raise at this point in time. To Mr. Howarth and maybe to the Chief Executive. The first one, well, the first two are basically about the monitoring officer element of the report. And I want to ask, was it unlawful for the Corla to appoint Mr. Alan MacDonald, the solicitor, as deputy monitoring officer and approve the continuation of the Chief Executive in the role, as the legislation states that the duties of a monitoring officer under Section 5 of the Local Government and Housing Act 1989 must be performed by the monitoring officer personally or a member of their staff acting as their deputy. In short, shouldn't the monitoring officer have appointed his deputy after he had been appointed?
Is that your first
That's my
point?
first.
Yeah, we'll just answer them. I think we'll take them one by one, and I'll ask the Chief Executive to answer that question.
Well, I think that's covered in paragraphs 86 to 88 of the report. In June 2019, we appointed, following the recommendation, of course, of the monitoring officer herself, Alan MacDonald. I'd always been a deputy at that time simply because if Leslie MacDonald, who was then the monitoring officer, was not available, there was no one to act as deputy. But I never had to exercise any of these duties. And as Audit Scotland have confirmed in the report that having appointed Alan MacDonald, or Alan MacDonald having been appointed as deputy, the matter's now resolved, and there was no need for me even to be a notional deputy. There is, of course, no prohibition on the Chief Executive being monitoring officer or deputy monitoring officer, but it would not be desirable practice, and for that reason, that's been given up, because there's no need for me to act as a backup. But it was purely there in case Miss MacDonald wasn't available and we needed, for some reason, urgent monitoring officer advice, which thankfully was never the case.
Thank you for that, Chief Executive. Councillor Murray.
I thank the Chief Executive for that information, but it was basically the legislation states that the monitoring officer must appoint his own deputy rather than the Corla appointing the deputy. So that's the distinction.
Chief Executive.
Yes, I mean, the Corla, it is right that the full Corla knows who is exercising these statutory duties and who the statutory officers are, and it was reported to the Corla who the monitoring officer was. Well, we knew that, and who the deputies were, and when Mr. MacDonald was appointed, it was right that members know to whom they should go in the absence of the monitoring officer. But it is entirely for the monitoring officer to nominate, in that case, her deputies, and she did so.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Councillor Murray.
Maybe it would have been appropriate to have noted rather than appointed, but that's that issue.
Second question.
Second question is, I think the Chief Executive mentioned it, but on the 26th of June 2019, the Council were advised that the head of paid service cannot be the monitoring officer. But the statute seems to suggest that the officer so designated may be the head of paid service. So has there been a mistake made in advice to the council?
Chief Executive.
Not as far as I know. I mean, I'll ask Mr. Langley to, if he's here, to provide the advice on that. But I'm happy to go with what Audit Scotland has said here, which is the Act does not explicitly prevent, but and indeed some council, one council I know still has the Chief Executive as a deputy monitoring officer, but it's not ideal because the Chief Executive is likely to have either have been involved in major strategic decisions or at least have knowledge of them. So whether it's lawful, whether it's permissible or not, it's not ideal and it's not good practice, or not best practice, I should say.
Thank you, Chief. I've just been informed Mr. Langley's actually on leave today, so he's not present. So, Councillor Murray.
So I think at that meeting we were actually informed that the head of paid service could not be the monitoring officer at paragraph 2.1. So I was just asking, was that an error?
Well, it's certainly the Chief Executive should not be the monitoring officer. Yeah, that's accepted by all, I think.
Okay, my third and final point is the best value assurance report of 2022 states that in section 97, page 35, in 2022, the Corla did not make agendas for the HR subcommittee available for public inspection as required by the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. So a question to Mr. Howth is, how is it then possible for the monitoring officer to come to the view that the agendas for the HR subcommittee were available for inspection by the public as required by law? One of these statements must be wrong. Which one is it?
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Before I ask Mr. Howth, I think the Chief Executive wants to come in. I think he might be able to answer that. Chief Executive.
Chair, Mr. Howth will speak for himself, of course, but I understand there's an error in the BVAR report. The correct position is as stated here in 89. The agenda, the agenda has always been available for inspection, which is the legal requirement. In the interest of transparency and best practice, it could also have been published, the agenda. That's the public parts of the HR sub-agenda. Most of the HR sub-agenda, of course, is private. But the legal requirements were fulfilled. The agenda was available by inspection by members of the public, and that's what we're required to do, and that's what we've done, unless anyone can advise me differently. But it's good practice, of course, to make the actual public agendas available at the same time, and that's what we now do. But the legal requirements were met.
Thank you. Mr. Howarth, would you like to come in?
Yeah, the Chief Executive is correct. The wording used in the best value report could have been more sensitive to the accuracy of what the Act says. Obviously, these acts were written at a time when publication was not as it is now, given the internet and everything else. So the Act does require them to be made available for inspection, which the Corla did, but as best practice these days, we would expect agendas and minutes and papers to be published unless there's, to be made available online, etc., unless there's a real need to redact something for one of the provisions under the Act. So it's the BVR that's incorrect, and it shouldn't have used the word publication.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Howarth. Councillor Murray, with a follow-up.
Just finally, if the BVR has an error, will it have to go back to the Accounts Commission to be passed? And where were the agendas available for the public to see?
I think the Chief Executive maybe wants to come back on that. Chief Executive.
I personally wouldn't insist that the BVAR be amended in that way, but we will note the matter in correspondence, and I think when the BVAR is presented to the Corla in December, that would be the right time just to note that. I don't think it requires to be rewritten, but it's not my report. It's Audit Scotland's and the Accounts Commission, so it's up to them. But I'll ask Mr. Mackay to answer the question about where they would have been available to. I can answer it, but he will answer it with more knowledge than I. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Mackay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Chair. The public reports on HR subcommittee, as with all public reports, are available on request from the committee services team. So if anyone coming into any of the area council offices or the area offices wishes to see a public available document, they can contact the committee team and that will be made available to them. They will also be directed to the website where most of the papers are, and we acknowledge the suggestion that in the interest of transparency, HR subcommittee also be included in the website, and we'll be doing that in future, although as the Chief Executive has noted, the vast majority of HR subcommittee papers will be exempt, again in terms of the Act, because they refer to individual members of staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mackay. Any further questions on either of the two reports before us today? The Chief Executive, do you want to?
Just to assist Mr. Murray, I think I can see how any confusion has arisen, because while we've been speaking, I had a look at the Local Government and Housing Act 89, and no wonder it's confusing, because Section 9(1) states that the officer so designated, that's the monitoring officer, may be the head of paid service, and Section 1A below says that the monitoring officer may not be the head of the paid service. So they're mutually, if you go into UK legislation, it actually shows both. But of course, that's never applied because the Chief Executive here has never been the monitoring officer, but that may be why the confusion's arisen.
Councillor Murray?
Just to come back, I never went to law school, but I used Google, and apparently a head of paid service cannot be the monitoring officer in England and Wales. So I think that's where maybe there's the mistake has happened.
Yeah, thanks for
But
that.
it is immediately contradictory, Chair. But not here, because the head of paid service has never been the monitor.
Thank you. Councillor Colin McLean, your hands up.
Thanks, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yes.
Yeah, I'm having difficulty hearing you, actually. I'm down in Glasgow at the moment. I'm difficulty accessing everything down here, but I'm difficulty hearing you here. Anyway, it's just a question regarding the finances. It mentions the reserves of 31 million plus, and these are uncommitted at the present time. Obviously, could we have a wee bit more explanation on what these reserves are for? And the second point is to do with COVID monies. Reading the report, I'm seeing there's two separate. They talk about a 4.3 million, etc., and that's got a carryover. What is the COVID money recovery going to be used for? And I take it's for recovery. Just a little bit more explanation on that, Chair. Plus, I might as well throw in the Crown estate. Why is we've got some leftover carryover money for the Crown estate? It's just a bit of teaching, possibly an unteachable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLean. I'll ask the Chief Executive to come in first, and then I'll ask Mr. MacDonald in Finance to come and answer anything as well to clarify these points for you. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be cautious because Mr. MacDonald will say what's truly a reserve and what's just waiting to be spent, which are two different things. But how the COVID monies are spent and how the Crown Estate monies are spent are in line with our policies. This chamber has decided on what we will spend the COVID monies, and to give it a recent point, we have just agreed to support cost of living pressures to the extent of about £500,000 out of these funds. Crown Estate is likewise, it is up to us within certain parameters, but those are pretty wide, to use Crown Estate monies the way we wish, and we have chosen hitherto really to make these available to communities, with a few exceptions such as athletes travel and a few top slices like that. I'll stop there, but it is entirely for this chamber to determine how these monies are spent, and generally we have in terms of agreed policy. But some of these monies may refer to money which is committed but not spent and is therefore in the accounts. And in that, I'm going beyond my understanding. So I'll hand over to Norman MacDonald.
Mr. MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the important thing to note is that this is a position at 31st March 2022. So some of these funds will already have been spent. In terms of reserves, 31 million. I don't have the exact figure here, but I think around 24 million of that was earmarked for specific purposes. That will include things like the Crown Estate, the WISP Life Cycle Fund. It will include government grants that weren't spent at the end of the year. For example, education might have had a government grant during the year that they haven't spent, so that is carried forward into the new year. So all these things are sitting in reserves. Uncommitted reserves, we have the 3.5 million, which we have as a safety net, and there was about 4.5 million of reserves which will help us towards the budget process over this year and the next year. In terms of that £7 million or whatever it is in total, that wouldn't be enough to cover the predicted deficit we have in the current year and in 23-24. There's a list of what's in the earmark reserve goes as part of the revenue outturn report every quarter. So the information is there for members at every quarter, but you can of course ask for more detail if you require that. In terms of the Crown Estate, as you know, the announcement of the Crown Estate funds is quite late every year. For example, we haven't had this year yet. So there's always a balance left there at the end of the financial year. So obviously we carry that forward as well. Crown Estate as well, there's delays with some of the community projects. We obviously don't pay it out until the project is proceeding. So all that money is set aside for that purpose. We can't use it for any other purpose.
Thank you for that. I think that covers. Councillor McLean, do you want to come back in again?
Yeah. Thanks. I probably would go and visit Norman sometime to get further clarification. But that's goes a little bit towards my enlightenment at the moment.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Councillor McLean. Thank you. You spend all your reserves down in Glasgow. Don't keep an eye on them.
I'm sure she will. It's very difficult to control her.
Thanks, Councillor McLean. Any further questions then on either of the reports? No. Okay, the reports were noted. Sorry, Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you. Well, unfortunately, I can't get online. There's something wrong with my iPad or whatever. But a few of the notes that I took earlier on, you mentioned the unspent 4.3 million, which Norman did mention there just now. There's one note that I had was CLD, community conversations, and that's been mentioned before that CLD is not evenly spread throughout the Western Isles. I don't know what the intentions are so far or what the latest position is, but you can't have even community conversations if you don't have CLD evenly spread, I would have thought. The unspent money, well, we had problems earlier on, and it wasn't a huge amount of money, but medical adaptions, this may come under IJB reserves or whatever, but somebody may touch on that. I think Callum mentioned this matter. COVID grant unspent again in education. You know, why was it not spent? Because it was specifically for a purpose during the COVID pandemic. Sandwich School, apparently there were savings for closing that down. What are these savings and, you know, have they been used? Another point that was made to me, does the council invest? Yeah. Okay, Chairman. Yeah.
Yeah. See some of the comments you're making, Councillor Mackenzie. Some of them are already in budget settings for the coming process. and they may be more
Well,
apparent to
are-
certain committees rather than to the
Well, which
approval of the
ones?
accounts. The CLD one is one that we're looking at the moment,
Right.
and I can answer that one myself. I think maybe the Chief Executive can come in. It's an area of concern I have myself because we don't have anyone in the Lochs ward either. And I believe that the new setup with the new CLLD project will actually give parity, equal parity across each area. And am I correct in that, Chief Executive? Is that the?
That's fine.
Yes, I mean, the team leader post has recently been filled, and I've met the team leader, and he will be looking at provision across the islands. That will take into account, of course, provision that's already available, for example, through community landlords and other sources. So we'll have equity. It's equity though in areas. It's not every area will have one officer from the corner, but we will ensure that there is equal provision, fair provision across the Western Isles for community support and development.
Okay, thank you. That answers that one. Sandwich School savings, what were the savings and what are they being used for? Maybe that's somebody could take a note of that one. Yeah, the other one that I just mentioned there, do the council invest in the nuclear arms industry? That's a fairly simple one to answer. Exit packages, I jotted down the fact that it had gone from 0.4 well, 400,000 to 1.5 million. How many people are involved with this 1.5 million? A matter that I've been bringing up for the last year and a half has been the finance director. Now, Norman has had a big burden to carry, and I think it's about time that we made the appointment, whoever. And finally, the other point, I had other points, but anyway, the fact has been stressed that the internal auditor, the rights of the internal auditor have been reinforced, that they're entitled to get documents when they want them. And it's not the middle of the night. We know that's not reasonable, as has been said, but they have the right to get the documents. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. I think I'll ask Mr. MacDonald maybe to come back and answer some. I think he was. I'm not sure he can give you the Sandwich Hill School one, but maybe that's something that we could maybe come back to you later on. I'll ask Mr. MacDonald maybe to come in though.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know the answer for the Sandwich School one. That would have to be someone from education answering that. In terms of investments in nuclear industry, the Corla don't invest. What the superannuation fund invest in, I'm not quite sure of, but that's something we can check. We don't have any influence over what the superannuation fund invests in. It's run by Highland, so I couldn't give a categorical answer on that one, but we can check.
Could you answer Councillor Mackenzie's point on the number of ERs that we had over
the number of ERs is actually shown in the exit packages table in the remuneration report on page 18 of the accounts, and there was 52 ERs.
And I'll ask the Chief Executive maybe to come in and answer the point on the Finance Director.
Well, I'll be giving an update, Chair, to all members on the position of Director for Strategic Finance, but I will say no more than it is our wish to appoint to that post as soon as possible, but recruitment in the public sector at the moment is very, very, very difficult, and we are not the only authority seeking a Director of Finance or Chief Finance Officer post at the moment, but I'll be updating all members on the position regarding that post in due course. But regarding the exit packages, inevitably, the figure for exit packages is considerably increased because so many of our employees have left us. But all in terms, as paragraph 81 of the report notes, all were approved in accordance with our early retirement policy. So these are just that is just the way it falls in this financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chief Executive. You know, I noticed Councillor McLean, is that a legacy hand you have up,
No,
Councillor
no,
McLean?
no.
Okay.
No, it's not, Chair. I'm just
Okay.
going from memory because I haven't got the stuff with me at the present time. But can I just ask a figure that, if I remember correctly, there was a figure in there in the audit there for Lewis Castle, and I'm sure it was over 400,000. Just a response from Norman. Are we, or yourself, Chair, the monies that we are due from natural retreats or whoever it is now, has it all been paid? And because there seems to be something in that for 2021 of 400 and something thousand. Is my memory correct, or did I read that somewhere?
Thank you, because I'll ask Mr. MacDonald maybe to come in and answer that for you. Mr. MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite sure what figure Councillor McLean is referring to, but there was some old debt from natural retreats that they have been paying back, and the arrangement that we put in place is being adhered to. So the amount is going down gradually.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
McLean.
it must have been the old debt at 456,000, something in that region. So we're up to date with natural retreats, Lewis Castle. It's washing its face, etc. As far as we're concerned.
I'll ask Mr. MacDonald maybe to come in and answer that.
Well, I mean, I don't have the detail. I'm not involved in what goes on at the natural retreats and the castle on a day-to-day basis. But in terms of the audit actions on following up the outstanding debt, that's progressing as it should.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gordon Murray.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to Councillor Mackenzie, who's prompted a couple of other questions. I was one on exit packages. Can I ask, in the past 5 years, how many occasions has the council paid staff leaving the council amounts of cash which exceeded the statutory requirements? And my second question would be, which statutory procedure was followed when San McKill Learning Centre was closed?
I think probably the Chief Executive would have to come in and answer. Executive?
Well, Chair, on the former, I'm not aware. I would have to speak to Mr. Murray about the premise of his question. I'm not clear what the statutory requirements are for in respect of employees leaving. We set our policies. We have our policies on early retirement and severance. Otherwise, we will reflect the legal rules. So I think that one will have to be followed up separately. On Sandwick Hill, I can't answer that. I think that there has been correspondence between Mr. Murray and legal services previously on that matter, or with education services, but I'm not sure that's a matter for this report.
Thank you, Chief. Councillor Murray. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, when the exit package has been calculated, any monies over and above that, over the policy. That's basically what I'm asking.
Executive.
I'll make inquiries.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, on that then, I don't see any further hands up or questions or lights on. So, oh yeah, Councillor Macaulay.
Thank you, Chair. Not sure if my question is relevant to this committee, but it's just a follow-on from what Callum asked about the Lewis Castle. It would be interesting to actually get a breakdown at some point of the income and expenditure that we have on a daily, monthly basis. I did ask for this 3 or 4 times in the past, and I was eventually told that no profit and loss was done on that particular part of our income expenditure. But I think would members appreciate that if we got a wee breakdown of how much money we actually spend as being a landlord to the tenant and how much income we get from them. It'd be a good footing. And apologies if this isn't for this committee, I can put it out. Can we pass it on to another one?
Yeah, I think Councillor Macaulay, that will need to go through PNR committee. So I'm sure we can highlight that to the PNR committee for taking up at a future date. I'll ask the Chief Executive just to confirm that.
Yes, Chair, you're correct. It's not for audit and scrutiny, but we'll take a note of the question, Councillor Macaulay, and it'll be addressed in the in the right way at the right time, but we're taking a note of your question.
Thank you. I don't need to raise it again, and that's good. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, with that then, finally, I take it that's all questions. So the notes, the reports were noted, and the next scheduled meeting of this committee will be on Thursday, 1st December. Thank you all very much for your attendance today and your participation. Thank you very much. Thank you.